After a good lunch, it's very difficult to keep awake. And lunch, after all, is processing food, which is a form of energy we forget. Many people think of energy in terms of fossil fuels and thermal power plants, electricity, and fuel for stoves, chullas. People forget that the food that we eat is the most primary form of energy for us, measured in terms of calories. That is a measurement of energy. So when you link all these things together, you can see where the problems emerge. The problem of energy has arisen over the last decade simply because, actually much more than the last decade, simply because of an industrial model which is based on consumption of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels from the Gulf countries and any other place where they are digging them, the use of those fossil fuels has led to an industrial model which is expanding all over the world, precisely at the time when those fossil fuels themselves have already peaked in terms of production. That means more fossil fuels are not going to be available, but at the time when we have peaked, that is the topmost point has been reached in terms of exploitation of the fossil fuels, at that time we find that there is a growth in further use of projects based on the use of fossil fuels. Now if you look at thermal power plants in India and China by the year 2020 are planning to put up 260 thermal power plants. 260 thermal power plants by the year 2020. Now already the effect of burning of fossil fuels is converted into climate change discussion, where again limits are being put. On the other hand, the economic model, the industrial model is continuing and is ignoring the entire discussion on climate change and is moving into more and more burning of fossil fuels, more and more use of this type of energy. This electrical energy is high quality energy compared to the energy that you get from burning of fossil fuels like petrol, coal, etc., etc. The demand for this high quality energy is coming from industry which is only contributing 8% of the jobs for the Indian economy. If you take the Indian economy, only 8% of the jobs are coming from this very, very intensive use of energy. Therefore, further development of these there is a limit, there is a boundary. You cannot go beyond that. If you have an economic model or an industrial model based on this, there is an inbuilt prohibition to further expansion. Economic system says you expand because more GDP, more fuel use is calculated as increase in GDP. As Mr. Devendra Sharma was saying in the morning, there is the law of conservation of energy and of GDP are two different laws. The GDP law is automatic increase in all sectors without any discrimination, without any prioritization. In the case of conservation, we say there has to be some limitation, some brakes have to be put on the type of development possible, not only because there is no resource of that kind available, but because it is becoming shorter and shorter in supplies, therefore the price is increasing for every gallon of oil or whatever it is. That is a common experience all over. Now we do not think that India will ever go back to price of oil which will be less than 50 rupees per litre. It is not possible. And in the next 3 to 4 years, we should be ready to pay for a price which may go up to 100 to 120 rupees per litre. In Europe, they are already paying a price of 120 rupees per litre because that is converted into euros. But they are already, in rupee terms, they are paying already more than 120 rupees per liter. We have reached 50, but we will eventually advertise. So the limitation is from the point of view of scarcity, from the point of view of price, and from the point of view of the environmental impact. The environmental impact is so severe that now the world community is trying to focus on how do we calculate this type of impact. The calculation is coming largely in terms of the carbon footprint. What is the carbon footprint of any activity? And then you calculate that, and then you are either able to reward or punish the person for generating more carbon for going into the atmosphere. Now if you take two models, you take the agricultural model based on fossil fuels, which is based on NPK, then you will find that 1 to 2 or 3% of world fuel supplies will be going for the production of chemical fertilizers. Those chemical fertilizers, when they are used, during their production phase, they will be having a carbon impact, and after, in their utilization phase, they will also be having an impact in terms of release of nitrates and so on into the soil, nitrous oxide into the atmosphere, which are even more dangerous for the planetary ecology than carbon dioxide. This is the model, for example, in agriculture based on fossil fuels, which is till today, Government of India firmly committed to it. As a matter of fact, last week, they are talking about expanding green revolution to northeastern states. Because northeastern states have not had green revolution for last 40-50 years, so now we will take it there. What they mean is, we will take more chemical fertilizers there, more NPK there, and make them also follow a model which they already agree is not sustainable. On the other hand, you have the Kerala model, the homestead model, or what I call the organic farming model, where all the energy input required for maintaining the ecosystem of the house is generated on the farm. That means several number of different types of crops, trees are put into the plot, some vegetable is put, coconut trees are put, and there are 1 or 2 cows also kept. They generate a certain amount of energy which is utilized by the house, which is very good quality energy, and is sustainable and can be used for any number of years, hundreds of years. Matter of fact, it will never get destabilized because it is based on a biomass generation system that will continue for as long as conditions are good for the creation and multiplication of the biomass. So we have these two models, organic farming model or the chemical. I am only taking agriculture because most of my work in the last 10 years has been in the promotion of organic agriculture. And in organic farming, organic agriculture, one of the things that we do is we reduce or eliminate the use of carbon in the way in which it is used in other activities related to modern conventional agriculture. For example, all the carbon on an organic farm is put back into the soil. It's not released into the atmosphere through burning or through any other process, but it's put back into the soil. If you look at the sugarcane production fields in Punjab, sugarcane stocks, even in Belgaum, all this area, sugarcane, after the crop is removed, all the stalks are put inside and they are burnt. So they generate a huge amount of greenhouse gases. In organic farming, we don't do that. We take all this biomass, dry biomass, carbon biomass, and put it into the soil. We compost it or we bury it in the soil under what is known as carbon sequestration in the soil. So the carbon, instead of going into the atmosphere, remains in the form of organic soil carbon, which is kept within the soil and doesn't get out when it creates a problem. So several practices are there in organic farming which actually reduce at source the generation of carbon gases into the atmosphere, whereas in green revolution agriculture, the generation of carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, all these are built into the very system of food production. The moment you use NPK, you are going to be contributing to greenhouse gases. the moment you switch to organic agriculture, or you follow a system like the Kerala homestead model, then there is very little input in terms of NPK directly into the soil, and there is very little release of carbon into the atmosphere, because all the organic farming practices are based on putting the carbon back into the soil. So these are the two models, and they follow basically a model based on industrial agriculture, and on the other hand, a model based on natural processes. Natural processes all utilize energy at ambient temperatures, that is room temperatures. Whereas conventional industrial processes use always high temperature models and processes. Because the theory is, according to the second law of thermodynamics, that the higher the temperature at which you burn a particular primary fuel, the less will be the entropy generated. This is the standard physical chemical model. But what I'm basically saying is this. If you look at the transport or transfer of water, you take just two ways in which you can do it. You can attach a pump and you have a water source. You can start the pump and take the water from this and put it to your field or put it to some other area. So you're using energy for the process. Now what is the type of energy you are using? You are using fossil fuel, because the electricity to run the pump or the diesel is a petrochemical. The electricity to run the pump is generated by burning primary fuel, either petroleum or diesel or something else. So that is ultimately the energy use that you are doing. It's purely based on the burning of fossil fuels, either primary or secondary, but it's based on the burning of fossil fuels. Now if you take nature and see how nature transports water, you will see that it does not use this type of fuel, but it does work in terms of physical. Those of you who know, we use work in physics in a very specific sense. That is the unit required to do a certain bit of operation. In the monsoon, you will find millions of gigawatts of energy practically transporting quantities of water from the ocean mass over the land mass. How is this done? It is done by the simple differential in degrees between the heat on the land mass and the heat over the water mass. Because of the difference in energy, water evaporates and comes over the land mass and then precipitates in the form of rain. The entire monsoon system of India is based on natural processes, based on what we call ambient energy. That is a very, very small differential in energy. Ambient energy is also the way human beings work. When we work, we don't get overheated. We have only a marginal rise in temperature when we go back. But if you look at anything which uses high energy intensive processes, there will be a very amount of heat generation, excessive heat generation, which itself is lost in the process. But nowadays what modern technology does is they put in captive generation cells and try to capture the energy that is lost in the earlier operation. But this is only starting now, what we call cogeneration processes. But earlier, every bit of energy that was burned in the fossil system used to be lost, and lost forever. It was never used. But that system never operates as far as nature is concerned. So this is all that I wanted to tell you today, because you have to decide on the energy requirements of industrial civilization. You have got to decide on the energy requirements of industrial civilization when used to agriculture, which is also something, and you have got to decide on natural processes used in agriculture which require very, very little use of energy, which actually use inbuilt cycles which are built into nature, where a lot of energy, a lot of work is done. Like huge quantities of water are transported in the form of monsoon. So a huge quantity of work is done, but with very, very small differences in energy. And the more we gravitate towards processes, agricultural processes, even industrial processes, where the use of energy is more in the ambient sector, that is at room temperatures, that is where we will have better production with least amount of environmental destruction and least amount of environmental pollution. But the more we invest in industrial production based on fossil fuels, there is no hope at the end of that model, except total destabilization of the environment of the earth, increase in climate gases, creation of greenhouse effects, rise in water levels all over the world. One of consequences of rise of water levels would be entire submergence of the coastal areas of Kerala. And they have already calculated that in Goa, the beaches of Goa will be increasingly submerged by the year 2020, which is only 10 years from now. 10 years from now, the beaches of Goa will have water right up to the high tide line all the time throughout the years. So these are very difficult things to grasp and to understand. But I hope that the debate can, provide some answers to the directions that we want to take as far as our society and development of Kerala society and so on is required. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your